Cheryl from the Lifestyle Digs. And as some of you know, I have been homeless since 2021, but not usually houseless. It's because I do a lot of house sitting, and when I'm not house sitting, I stay in hotels. So I have been in England a lot over the last year since between July 2023 and July 2024. And I just happened to have a break in between house sits, so I decided to buy a Eurail pass and hop on some trains and go around Europe. Now you buy a Eurail pass. Back in the olden days, it was a paper pass, and the conductors on the trains would just, click and put a little hole through it. But these days, it's mostly a app on your phone, and you have a trip planner for your Eurail pass, and you just choose a bunch of trains that you might be interested in taking. On the Eurail pass, it does say if the train requires seat reservations, and that means you have to buy a seat, as it were, to go between cities. This is usually on the high-speed trains, for example, on the Eurostar that goes between London and Brussels, and vice versa. I did have to buy a seat reservation. It was about 30 British pounds, approximately 50 Canadian dollars. So a lot of the other seat reservations are a lot cheaper than that, usually between like $5 and $10. So I am in Linz, Austria, and I need to go to Frankfurt, Germany, because I have a hotel booked in Germany that night in Frankfurt, and then the next day I'm taking a train between Frankfurt and Brussels, spending one night there, and then I had to make my way back to the UK. So I looked at my little trip planner, and it said I did not require seat reservations, but they did say that they expected a lot of heavy volume and seat recommendations were recommended. So I got onto the DB, that's the Deutsche Bahn train site. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I do not speak German. And I use that site quite a lot to buy reservations. Like I said, they were usually just a few dollars to reserve a seat. And some of these trains, like I said, seat reservations are not required. You sit in a seat, but maybe somebody else has already paid to reserve that specific seat, in which case you just have to move and find another empty seat. So I thought, because it looked like it was going to be heavy travel between Linz and Frankfurt, that I would reserve a seat. But I was unable to do so on the website. When I tried, it said that offer is no longer available. And I'm thinking, what offer is this? I'm not looking for any offer. I just want to reserve a seat. So the next morning, I make my way to the train station in Linz, and I go into the ticketing office for DB, Deutsche Bahn, the train service, and I speak to a fellow who is fluent in English, and I ask him if I can reserve a seat. He looks and he says, there's no seats available. He says, the earliest seat I can get you on is at 6 o'clock tonight. Well, that's no good. The train I was looking at left at 10:34 in the morning, and it arrived in Frankfurt around 3:45. Except you have to remember that all trains that go through Germany either are delayed or canceled. So I said, well, that doesn't work for me. I said, well, I'll just get on the train because it doesn't say I need a seat reservation on my app. And he says, no, you need to buy a seat reservation for this train. And I'm like, okay. And he says, if you, I'm happy. I can just stand if I can't find a seat. He says, oh, if the conductor, when they check your pass, finds out you don't have a seat reservation, they will fine you 30 euros. And I'm like, well, okay, I will just take my chances then. So anyway, I go on the track, and the train eventually comes in late, of course, and not too late, but it was late. And I was standing outside one car, and a whole bunch of people got off this train car. I would say between 30 and 40 people at least must have exited, and there was only about 5 people waiting to get into this carriage. So I hop on, and sure enough, the carriage is not very full at all, and I find a seat. Now, above the seats, I can see if the seat is reserved, and the seat said it was reserved between Vienna and Linz, the town that I got on. But obviously, Linz is there, and everybody got off. So eventually, the train starts moving, and at that point, I take my app and I toggle the train journey that I've chosen. I've toggled it on, so now I'm using up one of my Eurail pass days. That's the other important thing. I always wait until I'm on the train and the train is moving before I actually activate that trip that I've chosen. Because if you do that and you're not on the train, or you get booted off the train, then you've used up a day, and you could be maybe looking at now trying to take an air flight to between airports now. But anyway, eventually the conductor comes along and scans my pass. Doesn't say a word to me. Keeps going. So I'm looking at the trip on here on my rail planner, and it's about 1 hour until the next train stop. So I figure, well, I've got the seat for at least an hour. And sure enough, that's what happened. The next train stop, a lot of people got on, and the carriage really filled up. And I could see above me that the seats are now reserved between that town. I think it was called like Plassau, and it was to Nuremberg. I think that was the name. Anyway, I could see it lit up, so I knew somebody was coming to that seat. So I moved to another chair that was black, so it didn't have a seat reservation. I sat beside another fellow, and I sat there for the rest of my journey. In fact, another conductor comes along and he scans my pass, and this one actually said something to me. He said in English, "Have a good trip." So getting back to the fellow at the ticketing office in Linz, I don't know why he said that, what he did to me. It seems to me that he could have said, "I do not have one seat that is available for the entirety of your journey, but you do have a Eurail pass, and there are empty seats in every carriage on every leg of this journey. So it just seems, hop on with your Eurail pass, find an empty seat, and then if somebody comes along and says, 'Hey, that's my seat,' then you move to another seat." But he didn't. He tried to put some kind of fear into me that I was going to get a €30 fine, and that seats had to be reserved. And maybe he had other information I didn't. Seats usually have to be reserved on high-speed trains. This was an intercity train. It might have been partly on train tracks so that a high, an express train would use a high-speed train, but it was not considered a high-speed train. It didn't go that fast. So anyway, it's Cheryl from Lifestyle Digs, just letting you know that my journey between Linz and Frankfurt, I was like, oh, am I only gonna be standing on this train? Am I gonna get kicked off the train? Am I gonna get a €30 fine? None of those things happened. My Eurail app was correct. I did not need a reservation, and there was heavy traffic. But actually, once we got to Nuremberg, almost everybody in the train got off. So again, it was really, really light, hardly any people on the train. The carriage was only half full of that. So here I am back in the UK, and I'm just happy to be back from my big Eurail adventure. It's Cheryl from the Lifestyle Digs. Thanks for listening to me today. Bye-bye.